I don't know. That's a great point. We're like one of the most constipated offenses on earth.
Yeah, right now we have the atmosphere of a JC softball game. I mean, that's what we are, a JC softball team. As long as, it's not whether you win or lose. It's like the team that wins is the one that has the most fun.
This weather report here, what do I know? I'm a football coach. I suggest you go out and do what I do. Get out of bed, go outside, then you know.
Ah, yes, Mike Leach. The charismatic, quirky, and rather unique head coach bursted onto the college football landscape in 2000 when he accepted the job as Texas Tech's head coach. Leach was able to turn a middling Red Raiders program into one of the Big 12's best, but towards the end of the 2009 season, the stoic head coach turned angry, and that's where this case study begins. Leach was accused of mistreating the son of former football player and then ESPN analyst Craig James, and the firestorm that ensued eventually led to his firing. After a year of court battles, each side went their separate way, with Leach choosing to write an autobiography in 2011. The only problem was his editor was ESPN college football writer Bruce Feldman. In part of his book, Leach accused ESPN of, quote, perpetuating falsehoods spearheaded by James in order to tarnish the coach's reputation. The network quickly responded by asking Feldman to temporarily stop tweeting, but he was not suspended, and that's something he described as a surreal experience.
Because it's like you are, the expression the thought that kept on coming is like, it's like you're looking down at your own funeral. All these people are saying these things about you. You can't respond. You're kind of wondering at the same time you're wondering where is this headed, and it's like you're in a dream at this point. And
Kelly McBride served as ESPN's ombudsman at the time and was critical of the blatant conflict of interests.
Writing the book with the coach, right?
Yep.
So that clearly challenged his loyalties, and that he wasn't an independent journalist documenting the coach. He was a collaborator collaborating with the source for whom he was expected to be independent in his day job. That's not really a conflict that can be reconciled, right? I think that's one that you got to take a leave of absence if you're going to do that kind of book.
ESPN's choice to suspend Feldman drew criticism, but as McBride points out, 2011 was a time where intellectual property deals were relatively new in the journalism sphere.
People were just starting to think about journalists and IP. There had been a couple of IP deals, but there wasn't nearly the attention that's being paid to it now. And so, yeah, it's I think ESPN even admitted that they didn't have their process buttoned down. So I don't know that I would lay it on Feldman that he was deceitful. Okay. I think he was playing by the rules of the game that had been established by ESPN, which had been to be pretty loose about those things.
The consequences of the lack of guidance proved to be the downfall in this case, as was a lack of clear communication. Once Leach provided the scornful accusations of ESPN, Feldman failed to recuse himself from the network so he could go forth with the book. Meanwhile, ESPN failed to recognize that the relationship between Craig James and Coach Leach was beyond repair, and it shouldn't have been surprised that the coach targeted him and the network. While each side doesn't deserve to take the brunt of the blame, it's reasonable to say that both ESPN and Feldman both missed opportunities to get out in front of any conflicts of interest or damaging storylines. As for what could be done differently, McBride offered her own suggestion of what ESPN could do going forward.
ESPN should have had a better process in place, and they should have required, first of all, a sort of like a form that says, here's what I'm doing, here's who I'm collaborating with, here's how much money I'm expected to make, or here's the details of the contract, and here's how I propose as the person who's going to benefit from this, navigating the conflict of interest. And then ESPN management should have looked at that and said, okay, here's a range of options, and it should have been negotiated based on that. So ESPN didn't demand the right information ahead of time, and so that's on them.
Meanwhile, I recommend that journalists simply take things upon themselves to identify conflicts of interest. It's also important to be honest with themselves and their employers about anything that could tarnish reputations. The misjudgment from both sides show that journalism is more so reactionary, and preventative measures can't cover every situation perfectly. And that's been a theme all semester. Clear-cut guidelines are both organizations and journalists aim to be as comprehensive as possible, but different situations continually test it. That's why it's on everyone to adapt and to simply be honest. The world of journalism continues to adjust to new issues, and it's sort of funny that a job that requires so much exactness has rules that aren't.